imagine that the United States government has just declared war on some country. So we're getting together our Air Force people and our Army people, our Navy people. We're getting all of the people in reserves and we're suiting them up to go into war. Now you can imagine that as soon as something like that is declared, there will be heaps and hordes of backlash. People coming together saying, don't do this, war is bad. Okay, so let's think about that. Let's think about someone coming and saying that the war is not justified. They're making a specific claim about this war is not justified. So we can ask, okay, why are we going to war? What's the reason? What's the motivation? Are we on the offense? Are we on the defense? What's causing the war? Okay. We can also ask a totally different question, which is war ever justified? And there, we're not talking about a specific group of people. So you don't even have to think about the fact that you're American or you're Iranian or you're Bosnian or Russian, or the country wouldn't matter. The time wouldn't matter. You could be asking this general question, is war ever justified? No matter who is going to enter into the violence. So that's another point. War is always violent. It doesn't have to be physically violent. It could be emotional. It could be psychological, right? Somebody is coming out of left field and swooping into your parking spot that you were just waiting for, and you might think, oh, this is war. Well, okay, you're not talking about dropping bombs, but you are talking about some kind of violent reaction. War is always violent. It's the opposite of peace. So we have peace, tranquility, joy, prosperity, not unintentional, avoidable death. War is intentional, avoidable death, maybe on both sides. So we have this idea of war. It's something violent, and we can ask if that is ever justified. Now, here is a more specific question than is war ever justified? And the question is there such a thing as holy war? If there is such a thing as holy war, and you are just going to assume that that's true, then you're probably religious because you believe in something holy. Religious people believe in something holy. Let's pause here. Let's go on a tangent. Let's go on a tangent to remember that there's a difference between the natural world and the supernatural world. So this is a planet. It doesn't have to be Earth. Maybe it's like pre-Pangea, or I don't know what that looks like. But imagine that you're talking about the natural world. These are going to be things in time and space. They take up space. So things like rocks and people and trees, these are all natural things. Death, also a part of the natural world. Some things like trees have programmed cell death. So throughout the winter, for example, they go dormant. Then they are trained through biology to come back to life, kind of. That's also in the natural world. Everything in space is a natural thing in the natural world. Now think about if there was truth to many religions and there was a God. God does not have to abide by the laws of gravity or any law of physics, because gravity and laws of physics, these are the natural sciences. They belong to the natural world. If there is a God, then he would be a part of the supernatural. By super, we mean above, not a part of. So there's these two realms or dimensions or worlds, realities, and they're separate, The supernatural is one, and the natural is another one, a different one. If there are spirits, ghosts, demons, souls, gods, they would be a part of the supernatural world. So the whole idea of divinity, holiness, is not a part of the natural world, for the most part, for most religions. So there's a lot of religions. In other words, there are a lot of theories about the supernatural and what the supernatural is. A lot of different religions are very specific. Like they tell you in monotheistic Abrahamic religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam that there is a male spirit Godhead that is one and only one and is all good and all forgiving and everywhere omnipresent and ever possible, of all potential, omnipotent. And that's a really specific belief to have. Let's just roll with that. Let's roll with these monotheistic Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They have an idea of what is holy. Anything that is pleasing to God is holy. Let's bring that concept into our question, what does a holy war mean? So we've already broken down a little bit. We know it's something violent because it's a war, and we know it's something supernatural because of holy. So holy war. We can ask this question, is war ever holy? Because if not, then there's no such thing as a holy war. But people sure do use this phrase, right? Holy war. In fact, one of the earliest times it was used is during the Crusades, where Pope Urban told everybody that they had to engage in this holy war. But we'll get to the Crusades later. Is there such a thing as a holy war? That would be asking if there is a god or gods in a religion that would be pleased by humans engaging in violence. Because if you think that yes, the answer is yes, then you believe in holy wars, meaning you believe that they are possible, right? That's the general question. We would still have to zoom in and look at a specific war and ask, is this a holy war? Because we know that holy wars exist, but is this one a holy war? That's a separate question, right? So there's the particulars and there's the general. If we ask, is holy war a thing? Do wars that are holy exist? That's the general question. And if you say yes or no, you're answering whether a war could be holy, not knowing any context. If you say yes, wars can be holy, now you're able to answer the separate, more specific question, is this a holy war? Is this a holy war? Is this a holy war? Okay. But if you say, no, there's no such thing as a holy war, then you don't need to continue to the particular question whether this specific instance of war is what counts as a holy war. Okay, what do you need for some war to count as a holy war? So let's end with this. These are 3 conditions for a holy war. Now, if you have most of them, then you probably have a holy war. The first one is that it needs to achieve a religious goal. So for example, when we're talking about the Crusades, it had a religious goal. Muslims had taken over the Holy Land according to Christians, and Muslims were living in prosperity. And they would let anyone, no matter what religion they were, live under them peacefully, not enslaved. But the catch was that if they didn't convert to Islam, they had to pay higher taxes. Well, Christians thought that that was very, very bad. In fact, Pope Urban in 1095 was so upset that he created a war. He said, we have this religious goal. We want to get all of the Christians living under Christian rule. We don't want Christians living under Islamic rule. And we also don't want Islamic people to be ruling that land. That's our land. So the Crusades had a religious goal. And the second piece is that the war needs to be authorized by a religious leader. Now, that second part is kind of confusing because today we just don't really have context for that. We have the president, who is a government official, voted for, in theory, by the American people. So we have a president. Our president is not a religious leader. In fact, we claim in America that there is separation between religion and government, church and state. But it's not exactly church. It could be mosque, it could be temple, it could be hall. So theoretically, the government in America is not a religious organization. Now, it does turn out that if you look up who our Congress people are, who the senators are, who's in the House of Representatives, who's the mayors, who's the presidents, if you look at who's in these roles, you'll see that something like 75 to 90% of all Congress people, presidents ever in the United States history have all been some kind of Christian, Catholic or Protestant or Lutheran or some kind of Christian. And the ones who are not are typically religious. So some kind of religious people are in the American government. But the president, even if he or she is Christian, is not speaking as a religious leader. They would be speaking as a governmental leader. So in order to have a holy war, it can't just be that the person who's in authority is religious. It has to be more than that. It has to be a religious leader. For example, a pope, a priest, a imam, a rabbi. These are religious leaders. The third condition is that it needs to have results for the people who engage in war that are spiritual in what is received. So it cannot be that you're going to get paid tons of money here in this natural world. It needs to be up there. It needs to be out there. It needs to be in heaven. You need to have some kind of spiritual gain. So, for example, for the Crusades, Pope Urban told every man who engages in war during the Crusades that all of their sins will be forgiven and they will go into heaven. They will be by God's side. You're going to have rewards if you fight this war that will be given to you by God. Okay, so now we're talking all of the conditions satisfied. So why the Crusades are called a holy war is because they have a religious goal, they were authorized by a religious leader, and there's also religious rewards for whoever engages in the war. Now, you can still say, hold on, no war could ever satisfy those conditions. You can still say, if there's a God and the God is good, there would be nothing about human-on-human violence that would please that all-good God. But now you're entering into the debate. What would make God or the gods happy? And could violence on humanity ever please God? So now we're asking, okay, under what conditions are the conditions actually satisfied?